continuing this discussion in studio now, I am joined by Eric Mandel, founder and director of the Middle East Political Information Network, also a senior editor for security at the Jerusalem Report. Eric, always good to have you in the I24 News studio. Thank you for being here with me. When it comes to what we're seeing in Lebanon and the potential for future U.S. brokered talks between Israel and Lebanon, there are some reports that indicate Washington will not be giving the green light to include an American guarantee to halt any of the Israeli strikes deep inside Lebanon, all because Israel has the right to defend its own securities. But, Eric, without this American guarantee, could this hinder Lebanon's ability to agree to any sort of a U.S.-backed deal?
The reason Lebanon is not acting, Ganun is not acting, is because Hezbollah still is more powerful than the government is. Everybody is fearful, as Haneen said, about a civil war. The LAF is not willing to confront Hezbollah. The LAF has much of Hezbollah in there, but I'll give you a positive. So last week or 2 weeks ago, when we had the two ambassadors meet, we've met twice, that was a breakthrough. Those things are more than symbolic. Now, I have heard that Bibi will be traveling to Washington next week, and that if he's traveling there, some people are saying maybe it has something to do with some type of breakthrough direct talks. Maybe Trump needs a victory somewhere. He's not getting it in Iran right now. Maybe he can get it in Lebanon. Maybe the president is going to ask Prime Minister Netanyahu to make some concessions in order to maybe make a meeting with Hanun, maybe to begin direct talks. That would be huge. But the truth is, unless Israel is able to continue the war, Israel is doing the work of the LAF, and basically doing the work of those who don't want Hezbollah there. They have been forced to stop too soon until the balance occurs that Hezbollah is weak enough. But Hezbollah will continue, as Haneen says, they will continue to rebuild. Israel has to always, Israel has a different mentality post-October 7th. It is not going to wait and manage a situation. When it sees a threat, it will act. What I said at the Kyria yesterday was that Israel has to go ahead. If the Americans say, how much more time do you need? Even though it's not an easy answer, go do whatever you can, go a few steps beyond where you are so you have something to give up. Don't just say, okay, this is a defensive position. So that's how I was trying to explain the difference, how Americans think and how Israeli strategists think, and I try to bridge that gap.
It certainly could be interesting to see what could happen when it comes to the northern front. Now, all the meantime, as tensions do simmer beneath a fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire, the world's most critical oil artery has become the main pressure point in this standoff, raising fears that economic warfare in the Strait of Hormuz will further choke up the world's economy. Erlen Plachmeyer reports.
The battle between US and Iran is focusing more and more on the Strait of Hormuz, that vital shipping route through which 20% of the world's oil should flow. Amidst an extended ceasefire, US President Donald Trump has reportedly now also instructed his aides to extend the US blockade on the strait. This would continue to squeeze Iran's economy and oil exports by preventing shipping to and from its ports. On Truth Social, the president stated, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. According to the report, Trump believes that his other options, like resuming the bombing or walking away entirely from the conflict, carries more risk than maintaining the chokehold on the strait.
The Straits is basically the equivalent of an economic nuclear weapon that they're trying to use against the world. And they're bragging about it. They're putting up billboards in Tehran bragging about how they can hold 25% or 20% of the world's energy hostage. Imagine if those same people had access to a nuclear weapon. They would hold the whole region hostage.
Iran has an estimated 12 to 22 days until it's forced to shut down oil wells, as Tehran is rapidly running out of places to store crude oil due to the ongoing US blockade on Iranian ports, Bloomberg reports. Iran, in return, has said that it will never give up its control over the Strait of Hormuz, adding that Iran's missile and drone stockpile can sustain several years of war, and warned President Donald Trump that Tehran will, quote, not let him go. The US received a new proposal from Iran on Monday, but the president was reportedly unhappy with its contents. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has described the Iranian offer as, quote, better than what we thought, but said that any final deal must prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, which remains the bottleneck in the negotiations.
Now, Eric, moments ago, Israeli reporter Barak Ravid stated that he held a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump, and Trump told him that he will not be letting go of this Iranian blockade until a nuclear deal is reached. Why would the U.S. let up on this new naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz if all the signs indicate Iran can only last for a few more weeks, 6-8 weeks at best? If this is working, why would the U.S. stop now?
Well, I think one of the things that would be most important is the president explained that to the American people, because this is now a contest of patience. The Iranians believe that America will become impatient. Many people know that there are timelines working against the president. He has only 4.5, 5 more weeks before the War Powers Act. He has the July 4th 250th anniversary coming up, the midterm elections, and some people say, well, he needs a victory and an off-ramp. Perhaps the Iranians would give up their enriched uranium and open the Straits of Hormuz if they got asset relief, sanctions relief, and were able to not give up enrichment or give something that we know they'll cheat upon. This is a very important, this is a crucial historic opportunity, maybe a once-in-generation or a lifetime opportunity to really weaken the regime and get leverage. But ultimately, I can tell you almost everyone I've met in Israel across the political spectrum said, short of, and I call it regime collapse, there is nothing there's going to be stop future operations that are going to be needed, whether from America or Israel. And I think the president needs to go to the American people and say, this is a plan. We're only 8 weeks in here. We need to be patient, but we also need to realize that if they get a nuclear weapon, that means the rest of the region is going to want nuclear weapons. And that could fall into a Sunni jihadist, not just a Shia jihadist. And that is going to undermine American national security interests. And finally, the Straits of Hormuz, the American people don't understand a waterway, an international waterway. And they need to know that failure means the Straits of Taiwan and the South China Sea means America's primary adversary is going to take this as an indication that it could close that off. And that would be a huge blow against America and drag us really into maybe a world war.
Eric, certainly the American people need to possibly be convinced for the expansion or the extension of this war. But what about what's actually happening inside Iran? More and more reports indicating that the internal rift in Iran is now coming into the public light inside Iran as well. Some of the different lawmakers are not happy with how these negotiations are taking place. So even if some of the negotiators want to agree to a deal with the U.S. president, if they can't figure out who's in charge, how can they actually implement that deal?
I'm a contrarian. I don't necessarily believe that they really are working at cross purposes. I think when you look at it, what are they getting? They're getting to stretch out time and use it as an excuse, which advances their strategic interests over time. And remember, this is an authoritarian closed regime, and this is people willingly wanting to believe what they want to believe, whether it's the media, especially in the United States, which wants to undermine the president's success here. You have people in America rooting against the president in America in a war. So I'm not totally convinced that they are broken apart. And I think we should assume, and we're dealing with it, that's your problem. Come up with whoever it is, but you cannot use that excuse anymore. If they are a regime, going to, who knows if he's even alive or capable, going to the new supreme leader. And I think these are excuses. I really don't deep down believe that they are as divided as we want. And I think we're doing their work for them when we say that.
Eric, as far as the root of this problem, well, we might be focusing on the Strait of Hormuz. It all comes down to the nuclear file. The issue of this highly enriched uranium, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi to reporters today, he said that it's all likely still the Isfahan nuclear complex that was hit during the last war, the 12-day war, June war last summer. When it comes to getting that out, when it comes to actually handing that over, how significant is this for the next round of nuclear talks, if and when they do begin?
So the enriched uranium, which is 20 to 60%, it's only believed in Isfahan. that half of it is there. It could be in other places also. And if they have enriched uranium, that's obviously not that far away from weapons-grade uranium. They still have to weaponize. But again, the enriched uranium, it just shows what their potential of what they can do. If they really gave it up and got that, as I said, for asset relief and sanctions relief, they could produce this all again. This is about, and President was right in the beginning, this should have been binary. You have no right to enrich. President Obama gave them, without getting anything in reciprocity, the right to enrich. They never had that, certainly not for the world's leading state sponsor of terror. But let's not also forget about ballistic missiles. I heard some briefings that the quantity of missiles that they could produce per month in really a short time would be thousands upon thousands of ballistic missiles against Israel, which is the equivalent of a nuclear weapon or two. So we can, and they also could degrade all kinds of American assets throughout the region. So I think America needs to be patient, and America has to stand its ground. But again, it all gets back to a major speech from the president explaining what American national security interests are. And I think the people, you'll say, well, the Democrats are never going to come around. That may be true in a political season, but I believe there's 10 or 15, maybe even 20% of Americans who really want to hear the case correctly.
We'll have to certainly see if the U.S. president does make that case correctly. Eric, stay with me here in studio.